Hello, everyone.
Hi, ma'am. Good afternoon.
Have we started the session, Praveen?
Yeah.
Let's give a couple of minutes and then get started. And unlike last week, we will not cancel the meeting if there is a less attendance, irrespective whatever the attendance we have. We will continue this webinar. And will anyway, this webinar gets recorded and we will be sharing for whoever is not available for a reference. This will be shared. But just let us allow a couple of minutes for some of the participants at least to join. Let's give a minute more and we will start this session. Hi everyone, it's a pleasure having you all. Today also we have a very less attendance, but nevertheless we will continue with this session. So it was pleasure having you all, and I believe that you would all be busy, and also we're coming back from your holiday which was there, and thanks for joining this session. So let us start with the session where we speak about the latest releases what happened. So in today's webinar, we would be discussing the latest feature update. There were the recent deployment which was done, and there is an feed module or where there is a new feature which has been released. Along with that, there are minor changes which has been brought into an improvement in the existing order in the existing features. So those I will be explaining in today's session. So let's start the session. The latest features today we would be discussing are three features, where among the first and second are an improvement for the existing feature, a very minor improvement which I'll be taking through. One is the review period validation change. Second, the compliance percentage with 2 decimals. And the third is the dynamic checklist. Dynamic checklist is a new feature which has been introduced in Audit 360. It is used for a multiple purpose, which I'll be explaining in detail during this session. So apart from this, I would request all the participants and the attendees to share your queries on the Q&A section so that we can answer them live. And if there are any feedbacks and any suggestion on the upcoming module, any module to be done at refresher or anything, you can also share that with us. Please use Q&A section for any queries. In between, we will attend those queries. So let's start with the feature release. All the latest feature what we are covering today are the core product feature, which we call it as a standard product feature. So these changes would be available for all the users who are using Audit 360. So let's talk more about the feature what we have released. The first is the review period validation change. So as you all are observed that in the schedule module, we have something called review period, which gets captured as part of the individual audit schedule. So every schedule can have a review period which has a review starting to a review to from and to date range is being selected for a schedule, which is actually a optional field, which is not a non-mandatory field, but these information are captured here. The validation earlier what we had was on the current date. So any review period we enter, the validation we had set earlier was on the current date, that the review period should be always lesser than the current date. This logically was also not meeting in certain scenarios, which was being highlighted, and the feedbacks were shared by most of our clients. So basis the feedback we received, we have made this validation change. Now the validation is being changed from current date to the schedule end date. So any audits which get scheduled and the schedule ended with before, which is lesser than the schedule ended, the review period will be allowed. Like for example, if I'm scheduling an audit for the month of May and my audit starts from 5th of May to 15th of the May, then I can set the review period anything of past date or anything of the future date, but which is lesser than the 15th of May, where my schedule end date is being marked for that schedule. So this is the validation change we have done. So let me just take you through the application to show these changes. Let me just quickly modify the screen share. I'm just moving to the application screen and allow me to log into the application screen. I'm logging here as the super admin. This changes on the review period will be applicable for the super admin, reviewer, and auditors who have self-scheduled. So whoever is scheduling the audit can see these changes here. So when you come to the schedule module, I'll show on the individual schedule. When you click on create schedule, if you see, all the informations are same. We have brought in the review period from and review period to below the schedule start, and the validation works as in line with the schedule. So for example, let me just schedule one audit. Just scheduling an audit here. Choosing some random auditee, and I'm scheduling the audit for the month of June 1st to June 15th. If you see my schedule, end date is for June 15th. Now I'm giving a review period. Review period allows current date. Now today's date is 18, but I can even select future date. I can select the previous dates as well, the past date as well. And I can choose anything which is lesser than the schedule what we have created. So for this, for example, I'm doing an audit for month of June. I would select the review period of May. So whatever the data of May will be verified. So I can choose till 31st of the May. If in case, if I would want to give any future date, logically the system would not allow, because any review can happen within the schedule. Review of the data can happen, which is for the basis the lesser than the current or the previous day. Any future data we cannot verify. Hence the future date is not allowed here. It allows only less than the current date what we have. So I can just choose till 14th of June, and I can choose an auditor whom I would like to give the audit. So the reason why we have modified this is because for the future audits, if I give the validation at the current date, if I will not be able to choose anything for the May month and things. So that is why. And the main purpose of the review period is the review basis the frequency of the review happen. The review period should be selected and it should be a pass, but it should be in line with the schedule. So I'm just creating a save. So this is one area where the changes happen. Now the same validation is also updated in the schedule upload, also the CSV upload what we have, even in those the same validation has been made. So majorly all the future audits will be done basis the schedule upload. Hence this change has been introduced there as well. If you would like to do the quarterly schedules to be created with the help of the schedule upload, you can do this for the futures quarters as well. Schedule upload is one place, and the other place where we have made changes for the auditor under the self schedule screen. So create a schedule on a weekly. There's a self schedule where review period is been changed. So if you can see, if I select the start date as 18th to 30th of April, you can select anything beyond the 30th of the, because we don't have access to the future of it. So till 29th end, you can take the schedule. So this is a change which is brought in the review period validation. So any queries on these functionalities, you can update it in the Q&A section. We'll just answer them quickly. So the review period is one of the change improvement which we have brought in, where the validation is a back-end change, and from the front end, the position of the review period date selection has been moved below the schedule start and end date. So any queries, please do write to us on the Q&A section. Let me quickly check if there are any queries. Okay, no queries as of now. So I'm moving ahead. Next is the compliance percentage. We have made an improvement. Earlier, your compliance percentages, when we talk about the compliance percentage, the audit report, whenever we do a scheduling and the execution of the audit, there is an audit score which is be provided basis the total score and the achieved score. There is a score and a rating which will be provided. Along with that, we also provide a compliance percentage to show how much is the compliance percentage for upset auditee has been computed from the system. So in the current compliance percentage, we were showing the whole number, whereas we have now introduced with 2 decimal points, wherein you can even, if required, you can choose to keep up to 2 decimal point as part of your compliance. This was also one of the feedback which had come from our very valuable client, and who had shared this as an requirement, and which basis the different practices being used at multiple places. We also felt this could be a very useful for most of other clients. So hence we had incorporated this as a standard product feature, where we have just introduced in decimal. So like for example, when we give the audit scores, which we call it as your rating configuration, there we are allowing the percentage. Similarly, in the compliance percentage also, we would be showing the information like that. So let me just go through the super admin. Any audits which are in review, let me just show you if there is any percentage which we can take it up. Choosing for an in review audit. I have one in review audit. Just reviewed it. Finalizing this. Once I finalize, there's a compliance which happens. We choose the same audit. Okay. This was audit which I just finalized. When you go to summary, the compliance percentage you ideally will be seen in the summary page in the top section. So you can see this next to the score. There is a score which comes. So 16 out of 23 is a score, and there was a rating which was provided. The compliance percent. So earlier we used to show this as only 70% with the normal conversion on the decimal, which is 0.5 and above is converted to the next number. And now we are showing the accurate number with 2 decimal here. So the compliance percentage is now. So all these schedules which gets finalized now will have this value, which is a decimal level. So this gives more clarity in case if any further analysis or the percentage level, the differences to be seen is possible. So compliance percentage can be seen in the review audit module under the summary page. This is on the compliance percentage. This we have made changes. This appears in the review audit. We have not made any changes in the configure audit because already in this screen we are capturing the information in decimals only. So if you could see the configure audit module, the calculation what we do here we take at the percentage level only. If we would like to add a row, I can choose this as 50.50. 50.50 and that this decimals are allowed. It was allowed earlier also, and we can even basis this we can even enter the value. So here I can choose 76.75 and then so the percentage are all allowed here, and you can give the outcome according to this. So basis this or irrespective that is the value, you could see if there is any decimal, but into decimal the information can be seen here. So this is on the compliance percentage. Any queries from anyone? Let me just check. If you have any queries, please do write to us in the Q&A section. Let me quickly check if there are any queries. Queries. So you can ask this any queries on the review period, validation, or the compliance percentage anytime when the webinar is happening. So for now, let us move to the next feature. Next feature is dynamic checklist. So as the name itself suggests dynamic, you can now create the checklist which can be more dynamic or more flexible in the way the responses keep coming. So dynamic checklist is a feature which is introduced under the manage checkpoint module and is a standard product feature which will be available for all the users. Dynamic checklist is one of the mode of checklist configuration which can be used if in case if your checklist consists the responses or the questions coming to it in a dynamic in nature. Like for example, when we ask a question, yes caters to a different set of question and a no caters to a different set of question. In those scenarios, dynamic checklist gives a very suitable solution. If you have a checklist on list of process where you can just ensure that these processes are being valid, in those cases, normal current groups checkpoints would be helpful. But for a dynamic in nature, this is possible, and this dynamic checklist can be created and be added to any of the group, a general or an annexure or an exceptional group as a combination. So also as a single dynamic checklist also we can use this feature so that it is easy for someone who wants to only go with dynamic also. So there's a lot of flexibility which is in bought in, but there is a one-time configuration which would be required where like how we create the manage checkpoint post that there is one more leg of help the task which needs to be done, where is to map the checkpoints to flow in a dynamic way, because an application should know which checkpoint responses should lead to which set of question. That is one time configuration. If we do, then it would be easy for the system to go as per the flow, and basis the compliance being updated by the auditor, the flow of questions keep changing. So here maybe a set of auditor would say for us one question say as yes, and he may get question number 2, but another auditor would say no and he would get question number 3. So instead of attending all 100 checkpoints, you would be allowing the auditor to attend those relevant checkpoints which are in sequence to the compliance being answered and the outcome being seen. This is the dynamic checklist. Let me talk more about this feature when we go into the application and where I can explain how this dynamic checklist would work. So because this is a very new and a crucial feature, if you have any queries, you request you to write on Q&A, or anytime when you have any query, we can also take this query to you separately as well. Before I move to the next, before I move to the web level configuration, showing the configuration of web dynamic checklist, I have a query. Let me just check. Which were already. So there is a question which has come that audit which were already finalized, their compliance score will also change in system. The answer would be no, because the scoring computation would already been done. And once the data is been finalized, once the audit is been finalized, there is no changes which gets being made there. Hence, this is not available. Any audit which gets finalized now, because the scoring computation happen and the score updates happen, these changes can be reflected. So let me just quickly answer this. Any more queries? I've answered whatever the query have. So I'm just moving to the different screen so that I can show the dynamic checklist in the application. So I'm moving to the Audit 360 application. Let me just move to the manage checkpoints. So I'm in the super admin role. Already I have logged in for a different explanation. So I'm already there in this section. So I'm there in the super admin, and this feature dynamic checklist will be seen only for the super admin user or any new role who have access to the dynamic checklist. So let me just go to this screen. You see here in the manage checkpoints, under the manage checkpoints, we have a new sub module which is shown as dynamic checklist. So the prerequisite for this dynamic checklist is we should have a set of checkpoints already created. Like for example, in manage checkpoint, you should have created a group which can have a set of checkpoints which is created so that it is easy for us to do a mapping, and using already the predefined checkpoints, we will be able to do the mapping. So just for a demo purpose, I'm using the existing group where I can do the dynamic mapping. So let us imagine that we have done with the checkpoint creation. Now I'm going to the dynamic checklist. The moment you click on dynamic checklist, there is a warning message which comes, which says that any checkpoints whatever the checkpoints we have cannot be mapped to a multiple checkpoint. That means that a single checkpoint can have a single response itself and a single connection only. So we cannot have a checkpoint being mapped to multiple. And similarly, these can be not mapped to a multiple possibility. Multiple possibilities in sense, I cannot have a same checkpoint mapped for a compliance as yes and even for no or for not applicable. It is only one response for a particular checkpoint can be enabled. Then the same checkpoint intent cannot be mapped to auditor action. So if you have any other auditor action like your input and since for those it cannot be mapped. So it also gives you a note which says that basis the mapping being done, you could do, you get the allocation. So it is not that all the, if I have 100 checkpoint, not all 100 checkpoints will be shown to the auditor and he will be choosing it. As and when the responses come, it comes, it purely matters with the mapping we do. So let us just give as accept and come to the dynamic checklist. So here you have to select the group for where you have already created the checklist. Let me just take I'm choosing Web 11 CV, one of the checkpoints where I have 12 entries. Let me just increase this where all 12 checkpoints can be viewed. So now if you see, all the 12 checkpoints are listed below, against which we have yes, no, partial and NA. So here, if for example, when I have a checkpoint with yes, no, partial and NA, the heading would be there and the selection would be disabled if the partial or NA is not been opted. So if you all remember, in your checkpoint creation, you have for default yes or no when it is a verify action, and partial and NA are optional. So you can even remove the partial and NA are not opted in the checkpoint creation. The drop-down selection would not come, whereas you can see the drop-down for yes or no. In case if partial or NA is being opted for a respective checkpoint, then the partial would also work. And another thing is, any checkpoint which has only the expected action from auditor as input, for that particular checkpoint, we would not get the mapping there, because an input cannot lead to a question, cannot be converted as a question. It's basis a verify only the information can be done. So let us now do the mapping. We are checking EDO reaching center meetings on time. If yes, we need to check the center attendance. I have mapped that this checkpoint, if on click of yes, should take us to the center meeting attendance. If center meeting attendance is done, then I would like to know awareness of branch office rate and interest. So like this, I am mapping in a flow. I can map for yes and similarly go with this, or I can, if there is a response also, I can, as no, we can take it now. If EDO reaching center meeting on time, if I say no, then I would like to check the MAT availability. If you could see now that as and when the intent of a checkpoint intent is being getting selected for a respective compliance, it gets disappeared from the list. That is because a particular checkpoint can only get mapped to a single compliance only. Now, when it is no, it we saying is MAT availability. I come to the MAT availability. If MAT availability is also yes, then I would like to check the pre-closure terms and condition. If in case it is no, I would like to check whether center meeting charges changes every meeting. Then if center meeting attendance is, then I want to see if awareness of this branch. I would like to check if other MFI is meeting at the different centers. Then if it is no here, I would like to know whether they are having a group song. Then pre-closure should take me to customers to carry back loan cards, and then center meeting in charge can do a collection posting. So you can just keep mapping as per your requirement. And then if I'm going to the collection posting, I would like to know if we need, then I'm meeting any other center meeting in the same place or not. And then if this is also selected, then unauthorized person presence is available. So this is something which I have mapped. So here what happens is any checkpoint which gets started with the mapping is considered as primary checkpoint, because basis this primary checkpoint only, all the flow of information would happen and the basis are compliant. So here, as and when the responses come, if yes, it leads to a different checkpoint. Similarly to yes or no, it leads to a different checkpoint. So this here you do a one-time configuration where you map a sequence of the checkpoint which has to flow basis the response. And once the mapping is done, you now have to create an audit type or add this group to our existing audit type also. So now if you see, all my mapping is done basis the mapping I have created. In case if you have any checkpoint where you have not mapped, that will be considered as unmapped checkpoint. Now coming to this point here, when we have a checkpoint which is getting mapped to multiple different checkpoints and basis the compliance, the scoring, the way it has been handled is it considers the particular first parent checkpoint score will be considered for this dynamic group, and basis the responses, the scores will be done. So now let us do a configuration of the audit. Let me come to configure audit. So I'm creating a new audit type. As web in April, use a branch. Going next, for ease of for the demo, I'm just taking groups, general group. I am considering the one which we just did, 11 April. CV was something which we did. So if you see here, the moment when you choose the CV, whatever the group which we did for dynamic checklist, only the parent checkpoint score is been enabled here, and others the scores are not considered, because this has a dynamic in nature, and the basis the response the execution would happen. So the system would consider only this score. Now if I take any general group, for example, let me just take a group which is called as physical and environmental security. Now if you see here, I have a single checkpoint. Let me take other one, because single checkpoint may not help me give a difference. Not this, maybe a branch, license of branch. I have taken something as branch compliance metric. So let me just remove some of the checkpoints for the ease of the demo purpose. I'm going next. I have chosen one dynamic and one general group. Here I'm giving the scoring as different value. Moving to this configuration, I'm doing eliminate audit sign off for the use of demo purpose, and choosing a verifier admin. Then by 25 and 15. I'm going next. So now the score is 495. Let me just add some slab here. I've chosen the percentage only. So let me just take 50, then it has B, and then as A. So I'm just configured it now. I'm done with my configuration. Let me just quickly do the audit admin configuration. For ease of the demo purpose, I am just choosing both respondent and reviewer, audit reviewer as not required. I'm giving a save. Let us now schedule this audit. I'm coming to the auditor role. As I create the audit, choosing web 18 April, branch, and Evershine Nagar as the auditee. I'm giving today's date. Because review period is an option, I'm just not giving anything, or I can just give something which is of March to yesterday's date. and save the schedule. So my schedule has got created. Let us get started. So if you see in the dynamic checklist, the moment you start, you are only allowed in a normal execution because dynamic checklist allows only normal execution. Express or lightning mode is not allowed because the system has to take through the individual detailed way of audit here. So you click on normal, you will be taken to the audit. So this, if you could see this, there were two set of groups which we had added. The first set was a normal general group where the selected checkpoints all are listed here. You could see there are 5 checkpoints which are listed. And when you come to the group where we had done a dynamic checklist, only the parent checkpoints get reflected. So let me just quickly, if you see in this group, all the checkpoints has to get executed. Let me just quickly execute this. For ease of demo purpose, I'm just clicking on yes for everything. And this is yes. So my first group gets cleared. Now I'm coming to the dynamic checklist. So dynamic checklist group, if it is executed on web, you cannot see the list of checkpoints. Here also you can see only this information. On click of the responses. Now we are asking, did you reaching center meeting on time? If I say yes and choose a disposition here, if any, and then click on next. Our next checkpoint, the dynamically mapped checkpoints get listed here. So here the system doesn't take the way the normal general group shows as one checkpoint below the other checkpoint. Basis the response you can see this. Now if I go back and edit this, for example, I choose as no. And then there is a pop-up which comes with stay. Here what happens is when you are doing the execution of the audit and in between you go and edit something, anything which is downwards, whatever is there will get removed and you have to start afresh. So there, because the in checkpoint are mapped and it is dynamic, the information keeps changing here. So I can just click as OK, then I click as no, then I go next, choose a disposition. If you see, there is a different checkpoint which has come all together. I have a mat availability. I click on yes. I choose the disposition. I go next. I get a different question which was mapped, the pre-term condition and this. And I click on yes, or I can click as no also and choose this. Because here, if you see, I've clicked as no, and the pre-closure and terms and condition checkpoint was not mapped further for the no, you would get the finish button because the checkpoint mapping has got ended here. So here what happens here in the major is dynamic checklist, though I had 12 checkpoints, not all 12 checkpoints get audited. It gets audited only with the flow of the mapping which has been done. So all the other checkpoints which are not appearing on the screen or there would get as not attempted from the backend because that is not dynamic in flow and also not relevant to the set of compliances which is coming here. So you could see only this information available here. So now instead of no, I am just clicking as yes. I choose the disposition and I click as next. So there was already one more checkpoint. So you could see the next checkpoint coming up here. So as and when you keep executing basis the response you give, the information keeps flowing here. This is how the dynamic checklist execution works. And it works very dynamically where basis the mapping only those checkpoints gets answered and rest would be managed. Let me just quickly finish the execution. This was the last checkpoint. Even for no, there was nothing. If I click on yes, the disposition I'm just choosing. Right? I have a finish button which is appearing here and I click on finish. So now my dynamic checklist execution is being completed. Let me quickly check if there are any queries which has come up. Any queries on dynamic checklist, please do let us know. I have just explained you on how a mapping can be done and basis the mapping, how the execution would appear. There are no queries, so let me just move ahead to show further. Now we saw the execution, the similar execution works for the mobile side as well. Now let us see how this information would look. So basis the responses as yes or no, it comes to the auditee for sign off. Now because I've chosen eliminate auditee sign off, I'm going to the super admin role to see how the information look in the review audit screen. In review audit screen, because there are a list of in already the checkpoint which is there, only the executed one. So if I take web 18 April as the audit type, this is audit which we just executed. Now, this is a normal group where all checkpoints you could see and all the checkpoint information can be seen here where you can review it. Now I'm choosing the dynamic checklist and removing the old one. All the 12 checkpoints will be listed on your left hand side, but only the ones which have been executed can be seen on the screen for the reviewer to verify. He can just go inside like as usual how the review happened. He will be able to verify this and there'll be no edit available at the compliance level because this flow would get modified. Hence, we are not allowing the edit here, but all the other edits on adding the comments, confidential remarks, evidences, those are allowed. Only the compliance change is not allowed here. I can just click on update. You can even choose a re-audit. Re-audit can also be executed for these checkpoints. There is this as an issue, then you can see that there is no change in the review more the summary as well. So you can, if you see the scores here, there are scores which get scattered at a multiple level. Here, because the submitted score was the first checkpoint itself was no, all the below scores would get 0. If you have executed an audit which is not a issue, then you will have a different scoring. So let me just quickly show that to you. Clicking as reviewed and finalized. So here the achieved score would come as 0 because your first checkpoint itself was no, then anything coming below no, irrespective it is yes, partial or whatever it is, you would not get any score because once the negative is been identified, the score will be given 0 for all. So it is just because of the general group, this score you can see. Now let us just quickly do one more audit now where I will show with the yes. You have to choose an auditor. Create the same checklist I'm using now. Same audit type using branch, then the version other. We take multi-day audit for this. Okay. I'm just starting the audit. Sorry, this is the one. I just clicked as normal. Let me quickly finish this as this group. Let me just finish the audit as we're giving everything as yes, so that we can quickly go to the other group. You see, I've come to the checkpoint here. The previously there are some information which is already available. You can see the previous audit observation. I click here as no, because no is the negative. This checkpoint is a positive conformity no, so I'm clicked on no. Then I'm just clicking as yes, available next. So if you see here, basis my responses, there are different information which is getting modified. So next, here I choose as yes. All customers. Finish the audit. Now it is completed. Let me just quickly go to the super admin role. Review audit. This is the other audit which we have just done. Let me directly take the group where we have the dynamic checklist. If you see here, only those checkpoints which have been audited are shown here. I think I had clicked as a different one. Should have clicked as yes. Let me show if I have one more dynamic checklist where I can show. using the one which was executed. Yeah. You see the score here. The score for yes gets distributed among the checkpoints which are being executed. So there is a distribution of score which happens to derive at the dynamic scoring. I can even show you how the scoring, one sample scoring on Excel, which helps in understanding the scoring part. Give me a minute to pick up the I'm changing my view here. If you have any queries, please do write to us in the Q&A section. I'm just quickly changing the view to show you the dynamic scoring. How does it work? If you can see the screen, I have a Excel which I'm sharing. So in the case of single dynamic testing, if my checkpoint score, this is a parent checkpoint. If the parent checkpoint is 10, then the system considers this 10 as the score. And if there are any unmapped with those checkpoints only, if you see in this scenario where I'm selected the table, it has a dynamic checklist which has been mapped from CP1 to CP2, CP3, CP6 and all. And there is an input value which doesn't have any score, and there are two checkpoints which are not mapped to any of them. It's an unmapped checkpoint. So in that case, system considers only 30 as a score because of the parent checkpoint of 10 and the unmapped 2 checkpoint score is being considered. So your total score gets calculated on 30, and basis that you could see the advance. So if your checkpoint count, how does the scoring happen is it checks the individual unmapped checkpoint goes with normal flow currently what we have. And here in the case of checkpoint execution, if your any checkpoints, if compliance comes as no, directly the score is given as 0. So anything coming with the no as a compliance, any checkpoint executed, irrespective the compliance is chosen as yes or no, the value will be chosen as 0 only. Hence, it goes with the mapping on basis of this. Then if a particular checkpoint is, in this case, if the checkpoint was clicked on yes, there was no mapping, so it has ended just the complete 10 score has been provided. Similarly, if you look at a different scenarios where you have done one as a partial, you go to the CP3. In CP3, you've gone to, you clicked on yes. So if you see here, one is mapped to partial, partial is lead to CP3, and CP3 gets mapped only if it is partial. Otherwise, it's end the looping there. So in that case, it checks for the number of checkpoints which are being executed, and basis that the score would get split. So here the basis the two checkpoint, the score gets divided by, and it checks the score of partial and yes and provides the scoring here. The 10 gets split into two checkpoint, individual checkpoint score is 5, and if its full checkpoint score is given as 5, and here basis the percentage of your compliance or the partial, the scoring will be given to this information. So this is how the scoring would also work in the dynamic checklist. And in the dynamic checklist, we also have this is not mandatory that any group should have an associated group or not. It can be anything which can be individual dynamic checklist group also. It can be a combination of general and annexure like how we showed. Even a general and annexure checkpoint scores can also be, checkpoint groups can also be considered here. So this is on the dynamic checklist side. Any queries from anyone? And all individually in observations, if it is an issue, will flow to the issue module for further closure and all. So there is no change in the process. Only the change in process we have is mapping of the checkpoint on what flow the information has to appear, which is a new screen which has been provided. And if that dynamic checklist has been added to any to the create audit type or to there, the execution would come in flow of the response has been given. This is the information at that level. any queries on this dynamic checklist? Any queries, I think please do write to us in the Q&A section. We are happy to take this up. You can ask question. You can also share the feedback. You can also let us know if how this webinar can be improvised, well, any topics to be covered. You can always share that with us. Or in future, if you have these queries, you can reach out to Amaya for the further assistance. I would request each of you to just go through the dynamic checklist and explore how this works. And I believe this would be a great solution for most of your checklist. And you could see if it makes any use. I recommend you to use this feature. We'll just give a couple of minutes for participants to share their queries. Praveen, could you see any queries coming in?
No, currently, no queries.
Okay. I believe there are no queries, so we'll wind up this session. So it was pleasure having you all once again, and request you to be part of such sessions going further and utilize the latest features or the improvements being introduced in this system. Also share if you would like to recommend such feature or maybe an improvement or a suggestion on a requirement, it would be helpful. And would request you to explore this feature, and if you have any queries, you can always reach out to us, and we'll also help you in understanding and configuring this. If required, as a recommendation, if it comes from the most of the client, then we would do one more session on the dynamic checklist also if required. So thank you all. It was pleasure having you all. Have a nice day. Thank you.